Today I figured I would do a little bit of maintenance work on the $40 track drive snowblower. And this thing hasn't ran in quite a while, probably since, well, last winter. So I ran it out of gas, and it should still have some gas in it. Where's our oil? Our oil appears to be good. It does need change. So we're gonna do a cold start on this thing. It hasn't ran in probably at least 6 months. So at the time of me filming this, we also don't have any electricity. So there's really nothing else I can do. I figured I would work on this thing today. We're on generator power, so got that on. Pull this up. I always forget which is choke on and off. That should be on, actually. Give it a couple primes of the primer bulb. And hopefully this thing will fire right up. So this is the muffler. It's as cold could be. This is a Tecumseh Snow King motor, and from what I've heard, they're pretty good motors. So I have to take this thing about halfway across the property and put it into the other building so I can do some maintenance on it. So here we go. Oh, that was a good sign. Alright, let's turn the choke off. Ooh, she wants to start. To the other building and we'll do some maintenance on this thing. I figured today I'd do a little bit of snowblower maintenance. It's probably 40 to 50 degrees out here right now, so it's actually quite comfortable, well, at least for me. So some of you probably remember this is my $40 auction track drive snowblower. I bought this thing 2 years ago, was it? Probably 2 years ago. One of the tracks was seized up, and they burned up the belts also, so I got the track working, and I put 3 new belts on it. This motor has 2 crankshafts on it, which is really weird, and I'm not entirely sure why they did that, but I'm sure there's a reason. So I'd like to clean this thing off a little bit. I want to change the oil. The engine oil here, it's not super dirty, but I figured I'd change it anyways. And the gas and stuff is still from last year. Shouldn't have to do anything to the carb. I want to flip this blower up, so change the oil, and then I also want to lubricate some of these cables. This one here isn't that bad, and neither of these ones are okay. But this one here for the drive, this thing's getting kind of stiff to move up and down and whatnot. So I'd like to flip this blower up, put it on its nose over here, and they say to put white lithium grease on this. It's just a shaft that slides. This is like a friction drive disc that's in this, and I want to clean that also and kind of just lubricate some of the parts and stuff under here. So first things first, I'll probably do underneath at the bottom first, and then whatever I have to do down there, and then I'll come up top and do the stuff on top. So let's get started.
So I'm just trying to kind of take care of this snow blower and stuff. Moving snow can be pretty hard on equipment, and I just kind of want to keep up with stuff. So, and I also want to just make this thing easier to use. I remember the last time I shifted this thing in the winter, I could barely move that gear shift knob, so that thing shouldn't be nearly that difficult to move. And it only got worse when the colder it got. So what I'm doing here is I'm cleaning that, it's like a hexagon shaft there. It either has 6 or 8 sides. I think it has 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, 6 sides, and you can actually put a wrench on that and use that to pull off the bolts on each side. But I just used some acetone to kind of take off the grit and grime and stuff on that, and I discovered a problem with this friction disc, unfortunately. I guess whenever one of the axles had seized up on this snowblower, not only did they burn up both drive belts. This machine has 2 drive belts and 1 belt to drive the auger, if I remember correctly. I could be wrong about that. I haven't looked at the belts in a long time. I could actually go back and look at my video. But anyways, they had burned up the belts, and they had also burned up this friction disc, just trying to get the machine to move when it wouldn't move. So I ended up replacing this also, and to be honest with you, the snowblower really it's not super difficult to work on. You know, really doesn't have that many moving parts, I guess. It's not like a transmission in a car or a tractor or something. So, you know, if you are thinking about doing something like this, it's not that difficult. I wanted to also say I am not a professional at doing this kind of stuff. I actually didn't even watch a YouTube video on this, so I kind of just jumped in with both hands and just got the job done. So
I want to talk about what I'm doing here. So you'll have a bolt on the side here, that one right there, and you'll have a bolt, a washer, the bearing, and then you will have, and this bearing will only come out one way. There's like a flange here, so the bearing has to go out that way. And then after that, you will have the sprocket, which I'll show you here in a second. You have a sprocket to the chain, and then you also have a clip, which is this one here, and there's a second one. I think that goes on, where does that go? I'm not entirely sure actually where this one goes, but it's probably on that shaft. But anyways, you'll have this, then you'll have this little ring here or whatever. I don't really know what that is. And then you'll have the disc. So I took out all the bolts and stuff. Taking this thing out of the machine made things a lot easier. And you'll have, actually, sorry, the small one. The small one goes on the shaft. The large one goes on this thing. Yeah, there we go. So these are kind of pressed in here. I just kind of held my hand underneath here, put a socket that fits on here, and then just kind of pounded it, and this thing came right off, so I kind of lucked out there. So once you take this thing out, this whole apparatus, both this piece and this piece, of course, will be together out of there. Then you can take off the rest of these bolts with the, it's a 3/8. Pretty much everything on this machine so far has been SAE, so we kind of lucked out there, but you can wiggle these two apart, and then that is how you will get the rubber friction disc off. I can't do that with one hand, but they slide and whatnot, so you can slide them back together. Of course, this isn't going to do it because I'm filming. There, just slid back together. So those come undone, and here's my friction disc. So you look, oh, you know, it looks fine. It's a little cracked. It's not bad. And then you get to this, and that's pretty bad. And then the rest of this isn't that great either. So I have ordered a brand new friction disc for this. Just this piece. You only needed the rubber. You do not need this entire assembly. This and that and clips and whatnot. You just need this. So I will likely just replace this. Replacing this and all those pieces as one whole thing was like $70. And replacing just this, the only piece that's wore out, this was about $13 and change, so I kind of lucked out there. So I'm just going to be waiting on parts now, and then we'll kind of just go from there. I'll probably have to come back to this in probably another 5 days, something like that. So that's where I'm at with this thing. And actually, there's not a whole lot of rust underneath this thing. That's because I caught this. I repainted this thing just in time. You can see my runs and stuff, but I repainted this thing, and it definitely helps to make it last longer. So for me, it'll be a week to wait on parts, and for you guys, it'll be a second or two. I bought the new friction rubber drive piece, whatever this thing is called, and this is the new one on the right, and this is the old one on the left. And you can see how chewed up the old one is and how nice and new the new one is. So let's put this thing on. Oh, and so you guys know, here is a part number for this. Is a Yard Machines Yardman, and there's the model and the serial. So this is just the rubber drive ring. You do not need to buy this piece and this piece, because those two with this on it and the clips maybe and stuff, I think that was all like 80 some bucks, and this piece here was only 13. So let's get started.
Now that I have that part in, we can put everything back together. I'm actually using a different light to kind of light things up in here. This is actually a magnetic lithium flashlight that I have. It has 3 settings on it, and I only paid like, I think it was $8.99 for it. It also has a magnet on it, and it has a hook on it that you can hang it on. And I will tell you what, that light is incredibly handy. It's much better than the other one that I have, which is a corded one. But anyways, so now I'm putting that new rubber, I guess it's called a friction drive disc. But I'm putting that together and putting the shaft and stuff on. Now that I've taken this thing apart, I know pretty much how it goes back together. And I've also found when you leave something for an extended period of time all apart, you kind of lose pieces and you forget how it goes back together. I'm talking with, like, you know, when you're splitting a tractor or a vehicle or something, you know, you're kind of waiting on parts. But it's just one of those things, I guess you can't really help it that much. You know, I didn't entirely know that this drive disc was bad. It wouldn't really drive real good, so I know I replaced the belts with Kevlar belts, and the belts on this thing should be fine. I shouldn't have any problems with them for a very, very long time. But then I got to thinking why this thing wouldn't drive itself, so I figured I'd kind of have a peek underneath this thing. And sure enough, that friction disc was bad. So I will try to put the part number down in the description or the comments, so in case you guys have a machine like this and you can purchase a friction disc also and save yourself 60-70 bucks versus buying that whole thing. And now that I know that this works, generally what I like to do with stuff, when a part wears out like this, I try to keep a couple of them on hand so that when this thing wears out again, I already have the parts and pieces to do it. I can do this in an afternoon instead of, one day or an afternoon one day and then wait a bunch of days for parts to come and then finally get the part in and put it all back together again. So what I'm doing here, since this machine, I didn't really have much, there really wasn't much oil and stuff on the chains. What I decided to do was put some Lucas heavy duty oil stabilizer on the chains, and I will tell you what, you would not believe how tacky that stuff is and how it sticks to absolutely everything. And whenever I'd turn it, it was like all the Lucas was all sticking together, and it was really sticking to the chains really good. I had thought about using bar and chain oil, but I know this Lucas stuff is much thicker, so that's what I decided to use. And they actually say you can use that stuff on chains and stuff too, so I figured, heck, why not? So now I'm painting the belly pan of this thing, and yes, I did just put that thing on the machine wet. I really didn't want to have to wait to let the spray paint dry. I just kind of wanted to go and keep moving on. It was this day I was doing this, it was pretty warm, and I was kind of really lucked out again with painting and stuff. But I also painted the bottom of it and touched up the runs, so the bottom of this snowblower shouldn't have any problems at all.
I have everything back together in the snowblower, and I also have some fresh paint on the bottom of the pan of this thing. The inside of that, where moisture and stuff collects, it was starting to get some severe rusting. It was not rusting through, but I wanted to address it now. And keeping paint on stuff like this will really help its longevity. So I'll flip this thing back over, and then we can change the engine oil in this thing. I'll have to start it and warm it up, but I'm really glad I did this. It should make this snowblower drive a lot better. And actually, to put this in the transport mode, there we go. Now we can move her around. So I think we'll try and start this thing. I should actually probably wait a little bit so that the oil and stuff has time to drain back through the motor, because chances are this thing's going to smoke a bit. So I guess I'll just wait and fire this thing up, and then next thing to do is change the engine oil. I've got the exhaust pointed outside the building, and the oil should still be fine from before. I did drain a lot of the gas out, so hopefully this thing won't be too much of an issue to get started again, because a lot of the gas was leaking out of it. So we're going to pull that lever up to start. Turn that on, choke it. So I'm going to let this thing warm up a bit, and then we will change the engine oil. Now that the snowblower is warmed up, I'm going to pull the drain plug here, and hopefully oil doesn't go everywhere. Now, some of you might remember this was the snowblower I used that it was like an oil extractor that I made, and that worked pretty good. But my vacuum actually broke the bucket, so I am unable to use the oil extractor. So I think what I'm going to do here is I have some pieces of pipe, and I'm going to, hopefully these are American pipe thread, and I'll just thread these. I'll take this apart and probably put a straight piece on to a 90, and then hopefully the plug that I take out here will fit into this. And then I won't have to go through this big mess of changing the oil in this thing, because quite frankly it's not fun, and it's just a big mess. So I'm going to take this plug out, and then we'll go from there, I guess. But I do have a pan underneath this thing. And we are hitting the pan, so that's good. So I guess I didn't make too terrible of a mess. So we're going to let this thing drain, and I'm going to try to put some pipes on this thing to make this changing the oil on this thing a lot easier.
I was not planning on doing this, adding this pipe onto this thing, but since I didn't have that bucket for the oil extractor, my vacuum had actually put a big, I don't know, 3 or 4 inch split in the bucket from trying to suck the bucket flat, because my vacuum has that much power. I figured I would add something like this on, and for once I added this. I did not have to tap the hole. Tecumseh used standard American pipe threads, so kudos to Tecumseh for doing something like that and really making my job a lot easier. I didn't even have to go out and buy the pipe. We already had these, so I really lucked out there. And I was able to use the drain plug in the end of this pipe also, or the 90-degree elbow, so I didn't even have to buy that. And there is a drain on the other side also, so who knows, maybe at some point I'll put a second one on, and then you can pick your side that you want to drain the oil out of. But I forgot to move the camera here, and you can see me filling it up. But I did not drain the old oil into a container to measure it and then measure out the correct amount. I just kind of guessed on this one, so that's what I did, and this is what seems to work for me. But that drain is awesome.
So there you go. That's how you do a little bit of maintenance on this Yardman 7 horsepower track drive snowblower. So to recap, I changed the friction disc in the transmission down underneath it. I also painted the bottom side of that bottom plate because it was getting all rusty. And then I put some Lucas heavy duty oil stabilizer on the chains, and to add some tackiness to the oil so that it'd be less likely to drip off. I did that. There were 3 chains total. The one that drives from the bar that I put the wrench on down to, or let me think here, up to the wheels. And then there's 2 more that run independently. So there's a total of 3 chains on this thing. And I also changed the oil. I put some Marvel's Mystery Oil in the gas and changed the oil. And then I also added on this extension. So, I don't know why manufacturers do this. They put the drain plug here, so oil goes literally everywhere. So what I did to try to eliminate that for the first oil change is I shoved a funnel in there, and the funnel just worked the opposite way. But I used the original drain cap, a 90, I think these are 1/4 inch fittings, and a 1/4 inch pipe. I think that's 2 or 3 inches long. This is a little bit longer than what I wanted, but the shorter piece that I put in there is it was too short, and the wrench was hitting the side of the snowblower there, so I really didn't want that. But I'll tell you what, this is a huge improvement to this thing, and I am very glad I did what I did. So there you go. That's doing some maintenance on the snowblower, the $40 track drive snowblower that I bought at an auction, I don't know, a couple years ago. So hope everyone enjoyed the video. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more. And hopefully we will see you all in the next one. Thanks for watching.